cells. It's important for you to take care of the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the social self. There are all these different cells that you have to take care of if you're going to deal with it. So this time now, we're going to talk about a little bit about how trauma impact children at different stages. And I had started with the intention of just going from ages 6 through 18, 21. And I want to say, I teach developmental psychology. It's one of my favorite courses in teaching. It's really one of my favorites. And the reason for that is that it allows me to see what is normal development and what is not normal development. And we look at development through the eyes of physical development, cognitive development, personality development, as well as sociocultural development. So it's looking at all the different areas of the child's development, and then sort of look at what is not the norm, because development should occur on what we consider a continuous process. So the kids are going to grow until they can't grow any taller. So if they're going to, if I, like me, I would love to grow taller, because I personally have what is called the Napoleon complex. I buy a lot of high heels because I wish I was a little bit taller. But the reality is that I cannot grow any taller because genetically I am not there. I don't have the biological predisposition for height, right? And so you have growth that is discontinuous, and then you have continuous growth and development. And we all develop throughout the lifespan. And so when we look at what teachers are encountering, we are looking at children between the ages of, say, 3, 4, if they're in basic school. And I believe one of our participants earlier teaches at a, I think she said basic and primary school. And it was, I apologize for not putting that stuff in, but I am going to just touch on it briefly for those who do teach in the basic schools, in the kindergarten areas. I didn't have it in the PowerPoint, but I will talk a little bit about it. And specifically because some of the trauma that occurs for children occur earlier in their lives. So we're going to look at that from maybe about 0 to 5 years, just initially. And because I didn't put it on the PowerPoint, I am going to ask you to bear with me as I flip through my notes. And I'm going to go through that quickly because many of you are primary school teachers as well as school teachers or secondary level school. So the first thing I want to do is to just start with the basics. And even though it is sad, research is showing, and this has been shown in the United States. I am quoting what is in the United States, but research is showing that this is kind of reflective of all that is happening across the world. So the first one that is most troubling is that 1 in 15 children will be exposed to some sort of intimate partner violence each year. 90% of them will actually witness this. And when we talk about intimate partner violence, we're talking about when daddy and mommy quarreling and getting in fights, okay? And so they grow up seeing their parents having arguments and fighting, whether it's verbally or physically. They witness that. Children are abused 53% more by their mothers than their fathers. And it's kind of, it makes sense a little bit in the sense that mothers tend to have the children more than dads do. And so they might be asked to discipline the children. And what does that look like? Does it look like, is it discipline? Is it punishment? What exactly is it? Is it discipline, punishment? Is it abuse? And what is important here for us as teachers are, and I think earlier on, Ortega, you talked about being a mandatory reporter as an educator. And we want to know that, I want you to know that whether we commit the act, whether it's an act of commission or it's an act of omission, by not telling anybody what happened, anything that is going to harm the child or create potential harm to the child is child physical abuse. So if you know that someone is physically abusing a child and you don't tell anybody about it, you don't report it, then you are as guilty as that person. And I know, for example, here in America, as mandatory reporters, that we can be charged for it. Is that not right, Ortavia? We can be charged because we know about it and we have omitted to telling the relevant authorities about what is happening with the children. So if we even suspect it, and sometimes we here, we don't even have to identify ourselves. If we suspect it, then we have the responsibility to share with people who are in authority about this. And interestingly enough, you would think that all the little babies who are under the age of 3 years old would not suffer some sort of neglect, right? But many of them do suffer some sort of neglect and abuse, and they cannot take care of themselves, right? The slaps, the pulls, the yanks and stuff like that. Those are kind of things that will actually lead to the child experiencing trauma. So we're going to start with the basics then. What are my objectives? To highlight the impact of exposure to trauma on children and adolescents as they go through these different developmental stages, to compare this normal cognitive, social, and behavioral development of children with the developmental challenges that children have when they've been exposed to trauma, to also highlight how normal brain development is affected by trauma and the trauma memories, and to examine trauma from a historical and cultural perspective. What does that mean? Especially the last one. I would like you to think about it as Jamaicans, as fellow Jamaicans. How do we look at trauma? How do we see it? When we physically abuse our children, do we see that as trauma? When we verbally abuse them, when we curse them out, when we put them down in front of everybody else, do we see that as having the potential of trauma? So that's where the cultural perspective will come in. So if you have any questions or any comments and stuff, I'm going to ask you that you put them on the chat. And I know that Ortavia, you've been doing a great job in terms of responding to the various people who have been on the chat. And also, please bring it to my attention if you want me to address it, okay?
Got it.
You got it? Wonderful. So I wanted to start off by asking just two people. We can talk about two people. And I want you to just say, you know, the effects, just some of the effects that you have noticed in your classroom on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the things that you can think of that you can say, that's an indication that this child has been traumatized? Anybody can, you can open it for me, and then anybody can sort of like say something. And if they can't say it, then please put it in the chat so that Ortavia can bring it to my attention as we go along.
Adrian is unmuted. Adrian, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bradford.
Good afternoon, Adrian.
I have one case I've seen is that normally when a child is being beaten by a parent, the child tends to go like this.
Yes.
I have seen where I'm teaching and the child is not getting the concept. And I go to the child and the first, because I don't use a ruler. I have a pointer that I point on the board, so I stay at the side of the board so I don't block the students. So there's a pointer in my hand, and the child would immediately go like this.
Yes, yes. That's a sign. That
So, so
child.
I
Go
so I
ahead.
realize
Mm-hmm.
that child. That's the way the child respond
Mm-hmm.
when
Yes,
faced situation at home.
yes. That's an excellent one. You are going towards the child. You have no intention of hurting the child.
No, no intention.
Remember how earlier I said that the right side of the brain does things pictorially and the
Yeah,
imprints are there, right? They're just like little dots, like pop, 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 pop in the brain, right? And they literally are stored in the brains as pictures. And
yeah,
so that little thing in your hand is a trigger, right? It acts as a trigger to the child. And it's not the exact thing, but it looks like it. And because memory decays over time, the
yeah.
child, it's not the exact strap or the stick or the whatever. It
Right.
looks like a weapon, a possible means to hurt the child. And so
But
the
all
child responds. Remember how I talked about that automatic response? That is what the
yeah,
child does. So I see it and I do it, okay?
right.
Because I need to protect myself in some way, shape, or form.
But also,
Mhm,
also what I have come across is that the child do something,
mhm.
maybe get the concept wrong or the child walk the wrong way. And the first thing the child say, sorry, just out of the blues. You don't meant to say anything to the child, you just going over to the child to help the child to understand what the child is saying. Sir, sorry, 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 sorry. It
Yes,
was like
yes,
I realized that something that's how they respond at home. And it's
yes,
like for me, I'm wondering if there's a mentality that at home I can't do anything right, so I say sorry. So when I come to school, if I don't get it right, maybe if I say sorry, like oh I say sorry to mommy and move on, if I do that,
yes,
it will work.
yes. And also remember that you represent an authority figure, okay? You call the rules, you set the rules maybe, and you maintain the rules. So again, in a child's mind, you represent authority. And so in reacting to you that way, it is a way of saying, that's how I'm going to keep myself safe. Okay? Just like you
Okay.
said, very, very good point. Extremely good. Anybody else?
Nicola here, if you could unmute yourself. I know you had a few good points in the chat. Nicola here.
Yes. Hi, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Hi,
Yes.
Nicola.
Hi. I remember in my class the other day, a child, she used indecent language and I overheard, but I was going over there to talk with her. And right away she jumped and said, I want my mom to beat me. I want my mom to beat me. So I don't know if she gets beaten at home for doing the same thing. And I said, I'm not going to tell your mom. And she said, Miss, don't tell mom, don't tell mom. And if you tell mom, please let mom beat me. So I don't know. I really don't know. So I,
Ah,
I'm
so
happy. I'm happy I'm here this afternoon.
that's interesting that she says, let mom beat her. I wonder who else beats her. That
Hmm.
would be interesting to see who beats her because mom's punishment, I'm just wondering if that could be that it is less of the bigger punishment that she might be exposed to. Maybe dad, maybe somebody else in the home, maybe they might punish her in ways that are, more severe than mom's punishment, So don't tell. but at least let that one punish me and not that one punish me. So as a school teacher, my question would be, who else punishes you, honey? And try to find out. All right?
That's
There
true,
might
but
be
I think,
something you want to find out from that child.
right, I'm gonna take it up now that you said that because I know that she lives with her mom alone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
And then it depends on what punishment looks like too in the home.
right,
Okay? So that's something you want to look at because sometimes parents will defer the punishment and they can say, yo, wait, the dopey man soon catch you, you know? And it depends on
right,
the child's age. Because if the child is very young, when they are going to be scared of the dopey man and the whatever, the dark and all of that, that's a worse type of punishment than getting a few good slaps.
true. That's
No
true.
slap is good, by the way. All right. Okay, so it's interesting for you to find out about that one, how she's punished and the different types of punishment. Who does it? Okay. Anybody else, Octavia, or can I go on?
Tanya Bindloss.
Okay, Tanya.
Tanya, unmute yourself.
Hi everyone.
Hi,
Uh,
Tanya.
well, for me, one of the challenges that I had was I had a 8-year-old child who I had him for 6 months and he was constantly sleeping in the classroom. Early, my class would be early, whatever time throughout the day. So after I had the conversation with him, he was having gunshots in his area. And as a result of that, he didn't sleep at night because of the fear, and that caused him to experience the sleeping throughout the classroom. So that's one of the trauma that he experienced.
Yes. All right. And we're going to talk about that because teachers will see that sleeplessness. That's one of the signs that you will see in a child who has been exposed to trauma as well. Okay. So what did you do? Let me ask you. Just put you on the spot for a minute, Tanya. What did you do?
So one of the things, we had a discussion. So I gave him the notes. I made preparation for him to get the notes like after, so that he would not feel left out. And then I had conversation with his mom because she works at the school. So we were able to partner in order to get it.
Wonderful. Sounds wonderful. Can I take one more, Octavia, or do I move on?
Yeah, you could move on, Dr. Bradford.
Okay, then. All right. So, as you know, we want children who are going to be healthy, right? We want them to be healthy. We want them to smile like that little boy in the picture. Look at that smile. I mean, he has so many teeth. I don't think I have as much teeth as him, right? But that speaks to like a happy child, a child who is moving along the developmental path in a practically good way. But we look at the other child and we wonder, what is going on with this child? Where is her mind? You know, what is happening with her? Can we help her to develop healthily? Can we help them to develop some sort of resilience? Or is it that we are going to sort of just not be there for them at all, right? I will quickly look at this. It's kind of like a quick uh, overview of what I said earlier in terms of brain development. I think I had this on the other slide. If I didn't, forgive me, please. We need to remember that when our children come to us at age 5, 90% of their brain will be developed at that time. 90%. They have almost 90% of, almost 100% of the adult capacity. And I say capacity and a potential that the adult has, right? And this is before age 5. And when they are in the mother's womb and stuff, and by the time they hit the second trimester and stuff, there is phenomenal growth. And in the first 2 years of their lives, they have a lot of neural activities going on. It's almost as if they are born with all the neurons. They're kind of like disconnected like this, and they're spaced out like this, right? By the time they're 2 years old, start moving closer together, closer together, and they start communicating at a faster rate until they have this really tight network of neurons, just kind of like moving at an incredible rate in terms of use, in terms of potential use, okay? And so we have to remember that only 10% is going to happen after age 5. Why is this important? Because if the child is exposed to trauma before the age 5, and this is not on your screen, and I want you to take note of this, before age 5, if the development is not on par, the child is going to have problems with object permanence. That means the child can't remember the thing after it's outside of his or her view. They literally cannot. They have problems remembering that. So that's the first problem. So you see, when you write something on the board and you rub it off and you expect that they're going to remember it, they're not going to remember it. You might have them playing in the toy box or something like that, or with the toys. You move it from their presence. They don't remember it. Okay? Object permanence. And this is important for a child in the first year of life. Understanding that just because I don't see something does not mean it doesn't exist. Right? So we want the child to develop object permanence. So another problem that might happen is that they start having problems just solving the simplest of problems. They just can't solve problems. So you're saying, but you know how to tie your shoes. Tie your shoes. You tie it so, you do it so, you do it so. And the child does not understand how to go through and tie the knots. These are some of the things that they should be able to do. They should be able to button the coat. They should be able to string the shoes. They should be able to put certain things, the Velcro on and all of that. Button the shirt. They can't do it at age 5. Trauma causes that. Another thing is that they don't have control of their impulses. So they have impulse control issues. So they can't sit still. They have to touch that one. Even when you say a million times, don't touch it, they still have to touch it because they have problems with their impulse control. They also will move back in terms of what we call it cognitive regression. And all that is that they think at an earlier stage. So you find a 5-year-old thinking like a 2-year-old. Okay, you find a 5-year-old remembering maybe like a 3-year-old. So those are some of the things that can happen with the child. Other things for the younger child in terms of physical problems. All the basic school teachers, one, the child is not going to meet his or her milestones on time. Okay, so things like potty training, they have bowel issue. They might not be able to control their bowels or their bladders and stuff like that. They are not physically able to run and you know, kind of move from place to place. By the time the child gets to be age 6 years old, we say, or 8 years old, we expect them to develop something called automaticity. That means they run without thinking about it. They jump without thinking about it. But that does not happen for them. They might also go back into earlier behaviors like sucking the finger, wanting the blanket, doing things that are baby-like. You know, they curl up in little balls, they have tantrums and stuff like that. I don't necessarily like the word tantrums though, but they express themselves in ways that we don't find acceptable, right? And so we call them tantrums. So they might go back into earlier behaviors that would happen. They have problems sleeping. Later on, you might find them sleepwalking around 8, 9 or so. You find them more sleepwalking. Middle children in middle between the ages of say 7 to 9 or so will sleepwalk more. And they might also have eating problems. So those are some of the problems that the younger children may have in terms of cognitive and physical problems. In terms of understanding themselves and others, they will be extremely clingy. You see that little child who come to basic school and him just kind of hold on to the teacher. Anywhere teacher go, him hold on to teacher, right? He is clingy, and maybe not only clingy to the teacher, but he will form relationships with other people that will allow him to cling to them, to hold on to them all the time, because he is afraid, or she is afraid, that that person might leave them. They may also have a general fear of being alone. They don't like being alone. They're afraid of going to sleep. They might be easily startled by, the slightest noise, and they jump and they respond in ways that, the others may not respond to. And also they might start at this time to distrust others. Something I want to say about trust. There is the thought that in the first 2 years of the child's life, the child, and I'm sure you all remember this, teachers. I think it's Eric Erickson. He talks about the psychosocial development of the child, right? And in the first 2 years of the child's life, they must develop trust. If they don't develop trust, then they develop mistrust. The world is not a safe place. They develop anxieties, right? So children are supposed to have basic anxiety. All of us are supposed to have basic anxiety. But in the presence of trauma, the child will develop neurotic anxiety. So that's where they're afraid to be alone. They experience things like separation anxiety. Them bawl all day when mommy and daddy leave them. Them bawl until mommy come home, right? They can't seem to regulate themselves. By the time they are, say, 2, 3 years old, they're supposed to develop a sense of autonomy, right? And versus shame and doubt and all of that. And so they want to experiment. But the child who is traumatized is not going to want to experiment. They're not going to want to try out new things. They're not going to want to say no to people who can possibly harm them or who have control over them. In terms of just being able to be soothed and stuff, you don't soothe them so easily. So they just keep on crying, or they keep on acting in ways that it's just, and if you're not careful, it can be irritating to you because they just keep on. But then there's also the other part that I want you to pay attention to. Is when parents use drugs and stuff, they set up their children. Those are called teratogens, toxins in the body. And they set up the children when they are born to have problems controlling themselves. All right, just literally kind of adjusting to this new world. So trauma does not only happen post-birth. Sometimes it happens before they are born, and the children have to learn how to self-regulate. And then if you put that in the presence of parents who are caregivers who are not attentive to the needs of the children, then you will find that it's harder for them to be soothed, as well as to sort of relate to other people. Okay, some of the problems that they may have then is they may start getting into power struggle with you. And I want to tell you all something. You see, the child's ability to say no is all right. When a child tells you no, a lot of us think that, first of all, I have this belief, monkey see, monkey do, right? But you always telling the child no when you are not pleased with the child. Don't you think when a child is not pleased with you, he's going to tell you no too? Yeah, right? And if he doesn't want something, just like when you don't want something, he's going to tell you, no, I don't want it, right? So how do we meet them? Do we get involved in the power struggle with them, knowing that this is normal, right? And explaining to them why their no is not all right now. How do we work with them with that, right? So it's okay for them to get into power struggle, but it's the excessive power struggle now that you want to sort of like look at. And they also have problems sharing. So again, in the basic school and kindergarten, grade 1 and stuff like that, when you hear them say me, my, and whatever, again, some of us think that me, my thing is a bad thing, but actually that's a part of ego differentiation. This is where the child begins to realize that they are not a part of mommy and daddy, that they are a whole entity to themselves, right? When they are traumatized, they have problems sharing. So they won't share the toys, they won't share the pencil, they won't share the seat, they push the other one off the seat and stuff like that, okay? So that is what happens in the early stages of their development. So I hope I have covered a little bit for the children who are from 0 up to about 6 years old in terms of their development. Please ask questions. Yes.
Judith Richard just wrote a really good point. She said, I believe that some of these children are traumatized from the womb based on things that happen with abuse with mother as well.
Yes.
So how do we help these children?
How do we help them? Well, first of all, it's important for us to help them to self-regulate. And one of the things that you will see me say, even for the children 6 years and older, is to give them a time when they can come down a little bit. They have to learn to self-regulate, because self-regulation is a big thing. It's important for them in the first 6 years of their lives. They have to learn how to do that. And so it's giving them enough time to sort of come down from wherever the anger or the fear or whatever it is. Let them experience it, but let them experience it in a safe space, and don't necessarily try to put words to it yet. Very often when our children are experiencing strong emotions, we tell them, use your words, use your words. But again, when the right side and the left side not connecting, they're not going to be able to tell any kind of words, the feelings that they are experiencing. And this is where modeling is also super important. When the child gets upset or the child is not self-regulating, are you self-regulating? Or are you kind of reaching where the child is? Because when you are responding, like I say, monkey see, monkey do. Children, we are born with something called mirror neurons. And what that does is that whatever we see, we will respond to it. So if I smile at you, Ortavia, what are you doing? Ah, there you go. You're smiling back at me, right? And it's the same thing when we put on this angry whatever face, the child sees it, the brain responds to it, and the child is either going to pull back or the child is going to respond in like way. All right. So we have to self-regulate. We model the behavior that we want from them, and we do it enough knowing that they might forget. All right. They might remember this minute, but the next minute they're going to forget. All right. So it's how do we help them slowly move them through the emotions and then use the words to explain the emotions, and then get them involved in other activities that would show them alternative ways of responding to whatever it is that they're experiencing. Okay? I hope that answered it. If not, she can write another question. I'll follow up with that one. All right. So, of course, we did say it earlier that trauma causes a deep wounding in the brain. And we must never forget that. It's imprinted. There's nothing we can do about it. So let's make some comparisons now. We're going to look at children between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. When you have trauma, it's going to limit the task that they must accomplish. So what are the normal tasks? One, they should be able at the first grade, at age 6 years old, to have sustained attention to learning and problem solving. So as a school teacher, you should be able to stand in front of the child, and they might not have the attention span of, like of 15, 20, 30 minutes straight up, but they should have some level of sustained attention, and they should be able to be ready for learning. Okay, we talk about learning readiness. The child is usually ready for learning based on several things, but by 6 they should be there. They should be able to control their impulses, not getting up and running all over the place. They should be able to manage their physical responses, the fears that they have. They should be able to deal with the anxieties, the fears, as well as aggression. There is there's a theorist that talks, a social theorist who talks about different types of aggression. And I think as teachers, it's important for us to understand it. There is assertiveness, right? And this is where the child stands up for himself. But then there are two types of aggression. You have the instrumental aggression, where the child is running and the child buck up into somebody else, or or move somebody out of the way, not with the intention to hurt the other one, but they run and they kind of they push the person down and the person falls. There's a social part of it where the child get up and say, I'm sorry, and help the other child up, right? But then there's also aggression, and this in terms of hostile aggression, where the child literally will deliberately push the child down and maybe even stomp on them already, right? So there are different ways that we respond with other people, whether it's we're going to assert ourselves, whether we're going to hurt them by accident, or we're going to deliberately do it. The child should be able to manage those three. And the child at this time usually should have a sense of humor, right? So what happens when a child doesn't have it? They start showing up learning problems. And it's at this time that you will have children being diagnosed with ADHD as well as ADD around this time, because now the child is not able to control his impulses, is not able to manage his responses and stuff. And so parents now start saying, okay, I have too much energy, something is wrong somewhere, we need to diagnose. And that's when it starts coming, coming to the fore. At this time too, the child may have emotional swings. They might start being actively seeking attention from the teacher. They get up and they want you to see them, okay? And when a child wants you to see them, they're telling you something. It's not just me trying to be bad. That's not what is happening. They're trying to tell you that something is going on with them and they need you to pay attention to them. So long enough for you to find out what's going on. Sometimes they go back to the younger behavior. So you will see as 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds still sucking his or her thumb. The child should have overcome that by age what? 1 or something, because the child is out of the oral stage of development. And so they shouldn't be going back to that. And it could be that they're just doing the things that kind of like tell you that I am hurting, I want to be taken care of like a baby. And this is when they will also have specific anxieties and fears. So what are the physical impacts of trauma? You will find one, that the kids may have eating problems. They might eat too much. And you hear some people say, let me eat some, right? Could it be that he's not being fed enough? So he might have eating problems, might either eat too much or they might not eat enough, okay? Because the thought of food might just be too much for them. At age, between ages, say, I want to say 8 to about 12 years old, children are supposed to develop something called automaticity. That means to be able to run and jump without even thinking about it. Okay? They should be able to sort of make little judgments. And the reality is that sometimes they kind of misjudge and all of that, but that's a part of the learning process. But they should be more coordinated. They should be able to balance themselves more because they are fine tuning their gross motor skills as well as their fine motor skills. So there should be some kind of coordination and balance for them as well. The child who is not, then that's because of some trauma. Maybe they get beaten and the legs them weak. Maybe they're sexually molested, and so you know the whole thing of covering up the body and trying to close in their tightening up the muscles and stuff can happen. They might be underweight, overweight. They might tend to have more medical problems. And research has shown that between the ages of 9 to 12, really, that's the healthiest period of the times the child. There's a little puppy barking like mine. All right.
Polish, mute polish.
All
Yeah.
right. Right. So there is they might have more medical problems, right? This is when children should be at their healthiest because they would have gotten the vaccines, they would have been exposed to various things, illnesses, bacteria, viruses and stuff, fight it and survive. And so they should be healthy. The traumatized child is going to have more medical problems. They will also have more accidents. They will tend to have more accidents, broken arms, broken legs, and stuff like that. Sleepiness was something I think Tanya talked about. They might be sleepy in class. They might have sleep problems. They will have nightmares. They might walk in their sleep and they might wet their beds. Now, when it comes to nightmares, I know that I tend to be a little bit maybe I don't know, compassionate. I don't know if it's compassionate. Compassionate is not the word. But I think that when a child tells you that somebody's under the bed or somebody outside, or them don't want to go to the outside bathroom because somebody's in there or something like that, this is something we need to pay attention to. Okay? So nightmares and stuff, pay attention to that. Because sometimes they're trying to tell you a story of what is going on with them. And dreams are known to be everything that our senses experience, what we see, what we smell, what we taste, what we hear, right? These are imprinted in our memories. And while we are sleeping, the brain is trying to make sense of all that the body experienced during your hours of being awake, right? And they are being stored as impulses. And so when you have a child saying he's having nightmares, it's maybe little things that are popping up as the brain is trying to kind of register the different things that the senses experience. And it comes out as a nightmare. So we want to pay attention to that. You might find that kids also come and they complain of having belly aches and headaches and ear aches and stuff like that. When they come, why is it? You know, why is it that they are having this? You might want to sort of like investigate as teachers. Children also will have problems in terms of their learning. They have problems with language development. They're not able to understand the subject-verb agreement that we talk about. They don't understand the phonics, I before E except after C. They don't understand how to say walk instead of walkhead. They don't understand these things. They can't put things together. So they have problems. And remember, the language part of the brain is not developed as much when there is trauma. And so they have problems with verbal processing as well, planning and executing. Sometimes you have to stand over them when you give them a project to do because they don't know how to plan. They don't know how to put the plans in place. And even in terms of completing the task, you know, you say, okay, then children, I want you to write off all the sentence on the board, copy all the sentences on the board. And you have a child who can't even finish the first sentence. They may have very complex learning disabilities. So they might have, what is this called again? Help me, Octavia, help me, teachers. Reversals, inversals, right? They might, right. So they see the letters backwards, the N becomes U, and the W becomes
Dyslexia.
Dyslexic, yeah.
Dyslexia. They have problems recalling things like that, right? So they're not able to concentrate, okay?
Yeah.
So as I'm going through this, I know that some of you are seeing it, but I want you to see it parallel to the possibility of trauma, okay? Don't just see it. I'm sure you can say, I see this in my classroom all the time, but think about it in light of trauma. Of course, you're going to have those little ones who are going to behave, right? They're going to have some behavioral problems too. So you're talking to them and then back talk you. And then you might have the little boy who is a clown in the class. I remember this little boy I had once many years ago. And the minute he came in the class, it was like everybody in the class start laughing because they knew it was entertainment time. All right. It turned out that that little boy's father was abusing him like big time, not little bit, big time. Okay. And so the only way that he could deal with life is to just make everybody laugh, because if I can make people laugh, then they're not going to hurt me. Okay. So they might clown around. Sometimes, and as they get older, they may have problems with those who are in authority, not just with their peers, but also with the teachers. So you say something to them and they are going to meet you toe to toe, okay? They don't trust the world, they're anxious about the world. They feel that the trauma might just come right back again. So of course, they're going to have mood swings. Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're sad. Sometimes they're happy this minute, and just one little trigger presents itself and the mood switches like total, like night and day. They might have feelings of shame and guilt as well, and they may not show this to you. They might not tell you this. But then something that happens a lot, that we see a lot, is that they might cheat, they might steal, they might get involved with a lot of behaviors that are not okay. And they might even have problems keeping their boundaries. Sometimes they don't know how to talk to you, right? They also don't respect the boundaries of others. When other people create their space, they don't understand how to respect the space that other people are asking them to maintain. Okay, so what do we do in cases like this? And I want to say that this has to happen all the way through, whether we're talking about the young children or we're talking about the adolescents, right? There is the 3 S's that I have there. You want to create, one, a sense of safety for the child. You want to ensure that you stabilize the child's environment, and you want to provide support. So let's look at safety. You want to identify the safe spaces when the child feels overwhelmed. And Octavia, that addresses the question that someone had asked earlier. Create a safe space for the child. And when you create that space, it's important for you to know that it's not time out, that the child is not a bad child. You want them to get down. You want them to get the feelings of, just coming down. Make sure that there are no unexpected changes in the routine. The child needs to have structure. The child definitely needs to have that, because they need to feel safe in the classroom as well as in the school. And I believe in Jamaica, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you do have the mandatory reporting law in Jamaica. So if you know that the child's environment is not safe, it's important for you to provide that level of safety for the child. When you want to stabilize you can't stabilize the child's home, but you can stabilize the classroom. So you want to have a support system, and the support system can be mentors, it can be an adult in the community that the child respects. It could be the counselor. If you have a counselor in your school, maybe just send the child there just for a while, just so the child can come down, or the child can sort of start trusting the world again. In your classroom, bring a lot of play and a lot of artwork in, because you find out a lot from children using their artwork. It might look like foolishness to you, but as a therapist, I can tell you that they tell their stories with their artwork. Always be calm in the presence of, whether they're super anxious or super angry or super, rebellious, whatever it is. Try to be calm through it all. Make sure your routines don't change. Keep them. When the child comes to tell you something, don't kind of flash them off and say, Pinny, go sit down or whatever. I don't have time for this. You want to listen and listen. When I say empathically, I mean put yourself in that child's position. That's what empathy is. It's not just sympathizing with the child, poor thing. It's more like, if I were in that child's shoes, would I be feeling anxious as well? Would I be feeling mad? How would I be if I were in that child's position? Recognize the triggers, because you might be a trigger and other children might be a trigger. Sounds in the environment can be a trigger. So many things can trigger the child's response. So just recognizing, if you suspect that the child has been traumatized or is being traumatized, start looking at the child, because again, you will be able to recognize some of the triggers. If the child gets caught up in the moment or whatever, try to find some sort of activity that will distract the child, at least temporarily, and help them to find that support system. If there are sleep problems, then you might want to contact the parents. If the child is sleeping too much, you want to know why if the child is sleeping too much, and talk about that. Always be clear and honest with the child. If they ask you any questions about what is going on, it's important for you to be very honest and very clear with them, so that they don't have any doubts that you are on their side. I think you're all doing a great job right now, because you are learning about trauma and its impact. I would say try to find more development workshops that would allow you, professional development workshops that would help you to understand trauma. It is not something that is understood just in 1 or 2 courses. It takes a while to understand it. Help the child, of course, to acquire some kind of self-awareness and regulation. I think we talked about that in terms of let them feel what they feel before you try to put the language to it. Help them by collaborating with them to manage their emotional reactions, and give them the time to regain their composure. All right. We talk about plasticity in the brain. And, you know, the good thing that you as teachers need to remember is that the brain is such an amazing thing. When people say that, you know, we are beautifully and wonderfully made, I think it's in the Bible. It's the brain is able to reconfigure. It's able to take the part that has been damaged, that is normally responsible for something, and reassign it to another part of the brain. It literally can do that. So if you can provide the activities then that will reassign the certain tasks to the other side of the brain, then the child should be able to move forward. Always include the activities that will promote the positive social relationship, because often the child who is not behaving as the other children should is kind of like off, a little bit off. Sometimes they are isolated by their peers, and sometimes as teachers we might ignore them, or because, and sometimes we're not doing it because we want to, you know, but it's because we have a big class and because, you know, we really have a lot to do. And so how do we kind of pull them in such a way that they feel included in the system, in the classroom, and as an integral part of the class? Use eye contact with them, making sure that they get the feeling that you respect them and that you are willing to work towards finding solutions to the problems as they come along. Don't use the authoritarian approach, right? I am the boss, because usually they know you are the boss already. There's no doubt in their minds that you're the boss. The minute they walk in the classroom, they know you're the boss. But if we have an authoritative approach where we are strong in terms of maintaining the rules, in terms of discipline, in terms of what's acceptable, and we are also strong in giving them the emotional support that they need, then it's likely that they can thrive more. Again, you want to give them opportunities that kind of force them to problem solve. Use the prefrontal cortex. Just work through problems, because if you can, like I said, if the brain can reassign, it's plastic during those years. If it can reassign itself, then you can force them into that place where the prefrontal cortex will sort of kick in. Always give them feedback from the observations that you use. You make them, you can say to them things like, you did really vex a while ago, you know, but you kind of cool down now. You're all right, don't it? Right? And the child can sort of understand that. The child can sort of see, oh, she paying attention to my emotions. They understand that I did vex a while ago, but me no vex no more. Me did afraid a while ago, but me no afraid no more. Right? Because you are now giving the child some sort of recognition that their feelings are a part of them. And as they experience their feelings, they can now, they can choose to change the feelings and also change the behaviors and the reaction. So don't feel bad about giving them feedback when they do well and stuff. Give them a lot of praise. I will say though that children at this stage, unlike the earlier stages where they want a lot of praise and stuff, they know when the praise is real, and they know when the praise is not deserved. Okay, so when we are going to praise them for what they do, we must make sure that it is in line with whatever it is that they have done, and so they can now go forward. It doesn't make sense for you to just, Lord, good boy, when it really isn't good. All right, so give them the praise and also help them when they are working with other people. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute, and then I am going to ask Ortavia to sort of give me any questions that might have popped up that I need to deal with.
Yes, I have actually 2 questions and a burning remark. I'll start with the burning remark first. Nicole, in one of her chats, said some children want to misbehave and others want to learn. I'm gonna put my 2 cents in before I leave it with Doc. Just that I don't like the statement children want to misbehave, because I don't believe in that. I think that they misbehave because they're trying to communicate something to us in the best way they know how. And I'll leave it with you, Doc, to comment on that.
You have said it well. They don't necessarily, if they want, I'll add a little spiel to that. If they want to misbehave, they misbehave because they want to tell you something. Okay? And so when we say they misbehave, it's more a matter of they are trying to tell you something. And it's the assumption that they don't want to learn is kind of like a misnomer. Children are curious. They want to learn. They might not be able to learn what you're sort of presenting to them because of the challenges that they may have in terms of their cognitive processes, in terms of all the other things that's going on with them. It's not that they don't want to learn. Children want to learn as much as they want to play. And believe it or not, play is a child's work. That's why if we can integrate play into the child's learning system, we're not talking about disorderly play. We're talking about meaningful play. Children learn through play. They learn through interaction. They want to learn. But what are the challenges that are standing in the way and preventing them from learning? When they misbehave, and again, I don't like the word misbehave, when they behave in ways that we don't consider appropriate or acceptable, and it's true, a lot of times the behaviors are not acceptable or appropriate, but then it's for us to stay calm, figure out why it is they're doing it, and then now work with them accordingly.
And then prior to that, Nicole also had a burning question, aggression, how to handle this.
What kind of aggression is it?
Nicole Clark, sorry, do you care to unmute yourself and then just explain? Nicole Clark. In the meantime, I'll tell you, Martel had a few pointers earlier on. He said, how can male teacher respond to trauma related to students of the same sex? And I think he's talking about that, that age group, more mature age group, maybe from 10 onwards. That's the sense I'm getting, that he's talking about that population. Nicole is on. Nicole, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I was talking about hostile behavior. And just to backtrack a little bit on the statement that I made about some children wanting to learn while some just don't want to learn, I am talking about disruptive behavior during class time. They are the ones who make the rules in the class, but yet still you have students who break the rules by not paying attention during class time. I just see where this boy is a boy who is constantly misbehaving, and whenever time I show him love and attention, all the other children, they will listen, but he will never listen. I have to call his parent on video call for him to actually listen. I know that he's seeking attention, but right there in the class, I have 24 children to look after. I can't give him all the attention for the entire day while the others don't learn anything.
Right. And so it could be that in your class, that's the only place he gets attention. It could be. And if it's when mom and dad call, then he gets mom's and dad's attention. Here's the thing with kids. Attention, whether good or bad, is attention. No matter whether it's good or bad, it is attention. The child is saying, you're looking at me, you're seeing me, you're hearing me. And if it's bad attention and you're going to have to punish me for it, so be it. I still have your attention, right? And that to me is a cry for help. Is a cry for help. And so one of the things I love about with Jamaican teachers, because we learned that from the college, is that we are geniuses at finding ways to occupy them. We know how to pull them in and to sort of make them feel like they're in control and stuff like that. And not control of your class, because you're in control of your class, right? But it's about working with him and even finding time. Say, tell me what happened when you're something happened with the other children when me have to just really sit down and just pay attention.
I do that.
And what him say? What does he say?
He's not a child who normally speaks up, but I am getting something from him nowadays, because I constantly praise him. I constantly asking him to be involved and all of that. But sometimes he will just get up from his seat and just start to skate in the class while you're there trying to get a child who is not doing well to get something done. And for me, that is disruptive. And then when he does that, another boy will follow him. These are 6-year-olds. I understand that they are in the early years and play is a child work and all of that. But at some point in time, he has to settle because he's moving on to the next level. And when he gets to that level, you will hear that Miss Clark never do anything with the set of children while they were in her class.
And that too is the dilemma for the teachers. And sometimes, my daughter, for example, she teaches here, and she had 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and stuff. And eventually she just literally had to, seriously, they literally had to take the children out of the classroom because they were that disruptive. She tried everything. And, she literally had to videotape it so that the parents could see what the child was doing. And it is difficult. It is hard. But also, like I said, like in previous slides, it's an indication that that child might have experienced some sort of trauma. And it's just, he knows he's going to get your attention. He knows you're going to be there. He knows that you're going to, be there for him. And sometimes that's all you can do. Just be there for him. And,
Well, luckily, I am experienced. So what I did was to have a dialogue with the parent, and
good.
I find out what was happening at home with the child and the parent. And so I am better able now to deal with the child. But in the first place, it was very, very annoying for me to try to talk to him. He would never respond to me. All he would do is just stand there staring at me, or back chat me, or so on or so forth. And then when I found out what was happening, I said, okay, I realized that the child actually needed my attention. But what I am saying, I can't give him all of my attention for the entire day. What about the other students? They need attention too.
So do you have like activities where he might be just given, I think you talked about it, differentiated activities, Octavia. So
Yes.
creating, go ahead, talk a little bit about that, because I
So,
think it might be helpful here too.
right, this is where your differentiation comes in, and it's going to go hand in hand with your classroom management. A child like that
Mhm.
sometimes just need a reminder, a kind reminder. It's not your time. Focus on your activity, and I'll be right back with you. He just needs that reminder or a time. I like to give time. I need 2 minutes. I give you a timer. You can use a timer for me. Go put 2 minutes on the timer. When it's up, it's your turn again. So
Okay.
you're cueing him up to know, not your turn, not your turn. And he's 6, so he's in that age range where this becomes a factor. If he's a visual learner and you're auditorily saying to him, I can't talk to you right now because I'm teaching, he does not receive it because he does not understand. If he's a visual learner and you put 2 minutes on the clock, he will know when that buzzer goes off, it's my turn. So that's one thing that you can try immediately. And you have to do this, not sometimes, but 100% of the time. And you can up the time. You start with a lower level time, and then you increase the time as it goes to where you could get him to 10 minutes, because an impulsive kid, you need to start with 60 seconds, really. 5 minutes is not going to work for a kid who's really, really impulsive.
Okay.
And I like the fact that you did speak with the parents and you found out there were things that were going on in the home, because sometimes that's what we need to do. We need to find out what is it that's going on in the child's environment that is causing the child to behave the way he or she is. You know, again, it's about communication. So how can your principals help you then? Principals, don't get me in trouble, all right? But first, you have to create an atmosphere of trust. It has to be there where the teachers feel that they can collaborate with you. When they tell you something is going on, that they can trust, first of all, to come to you and not feel that it's up top, I'm up top, and you're at the bottom. It has to be one of the marrying of the teachers. Like, say, for example, Nicole, it was Nicole, right? Right. You should be able to speak with your principal in terms of, you know, this child is doing this or that, and I know my responsibility is to manage my classroom and stuff, but how can we work better on this? Make sure, of course, there are some kind of professional development, so that the teachers can actually kind of incorporate a kind of wellness program for the teachers. Like, you who are stressed out on a day-to-day basis, you need to have a wellness program for your teachers, okay? Make sure that there are adults outside, not necessarily just in the school. And this is how you create trauma-sensitive schools. That I always say, from the child comes in, the gate where the people selling the sweetie, the people must know how to talk to the children, because they don't know what the child went through the night before. You know, it's even as teachers, if you hear somebody barking at them at the gate, you stop them and say, "Excuse me, you know, you don't know what experience today. You don't know how much people back after him. You might call him right now and ask him how much people back after him. And he can tell them maybe the father, the people in on the road, the driver, everybody, you know." And now you come back at him. So have people even in the canteen and wherever supporting the children, because you don't know what it might trigger them. Always have that optimistic thing that it's going to grow, of course, and then always promote mentorship programs, because and Dr. Dwayne can talk a little bit about that too, right, Dwayne?
Oh yes.
About the mentorship programs in the schools for the children.
Yes. We're going to have a seminar. It's
on
the mentor. Yes, in a few weeks, because I'm listening and I'm seeing where it ties into mentoring. Because if you have both the counseling part of it and the mentoring part of it, it could help them to develop the whole child even more.
Right.
With that. So yes, it's coming. It's coming.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to ask one question for Nicole. Nicole, do you have a behavior chart for that child?
Yes, I do. I have a behavior chart in the
And
class.
are you using it like every time he follows your instruction? And if you haven't, just start. Every
Yes,
time
I
you follow
do.
your instruction, give him
I
something.
do.
But make it relatable to what he likes. So if he likes superhero, make it a superhero chart. Because those very little things are ways of connecting with him and ways that making him see, okay, you have my attention. See, I included something that you really liked, you know, and you get into it. Talk to him and let him choose his prizes and so on. What will be my consequence? What will be my reward? And then that way you're pushing it back on him too, to start learning, like Dr. Bradford says, to take accountability for his own actions.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to tie that in right away because he needs that consistency. And clearly there's a breakdown in that attention-seeking behavior. You have to build that back up. That's where you come in. You can't fix home. You can't fix most of the other stuff, but you can let him have that sense of safety and belonging and hope in your classroom.
I tried.
Yeah, you're doing it. Just keep going and add the other stuff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Doctor, there was Marcel's question. How can male teacher respond to trauma-related students? And I think he's referring to students with the same sex, the male students. If I'm wrong, come on, Martel, you can speak up.
I would like a little bit of clarity about that.
Yes. Martel, I see you, Martel Moody. Can you open your line? Okay, here he is. Martel?
Since you are unmuted.
Alex, you need to closer.
You say you are unmuted by the host. Then
Yes, yes, you can talk. Martel, we can hear you.
Can we see him too?
Martel, we can hear you. Just go ahead.
Yes, I'm talking about a male and also
We can hardly hear you. Put your mouth closer to your device so we can hear you clearer.
okay. I'm talking about a male student and also a female student that goes through trauma.
So how does the teacher work with the male students, the male student? Well, you might want to know whether the trauma was the perpetrator of the trauma was male, because you might be a trigger for him, right? If the girl was traumatized by a male also, you could be a trigger. So I would say, first of all, male or female, you want to find out what was the source of the trauma. Okay, what is it about you that might remind the child of the traumatic events? And so this is where, again, it comes with modeling. And you might see the male student being aggressive and up in your face and kind of, you know, like whatever, but that's what he saw. And that child might be in survival mode. In terms of the brain, that's where the child is. He might be in survival mode. And survival mode does not always mean that you have to be submissive and go along with what everybody else is saying. Survival mode can actually mean that I am going to fight you. I'm not just going to sit down and deal with whatever. I am going to come up in your face so that you know that I need to survive too. So then it goes back again to modeling, I think. Goes back to communicating with the child, letting them understand that you are observing the behavior. You would like to understand the behavior. You would like to understand what's going on. You know, if it's a case where the child came to you like this, then the work might be a little bit harder. But if you knew the child before and this just popped up, then you might want to have a conversation about, I'm noticing something different, you know. The last couple of weeks, things have been a little bit kind of rough, you know, and I don't know what's going on, but, you know, we can talk about it or something like that. Or find opportunities to communicate that you're present for the child so that the child now can start opening up to you. It might not happen immediately. That's why art and play is so good for small children. But for the older kids, you can even use the peer system where, you know, you can get a lot of information through their peers as well. You know, and believe me, the peers love to talk. Them love to tell people what's going on with them friends. Oh, they love to.
True.
You know, and but then you will also have to be discerning in terms of what is true and what is not true. And then be able to be open enough to that child so the child can come to you and maybe share with you what is going on.
Thank you very much.
Does that help at all?
Yes.
Okay. And don't always pawn it off on just because you're male. Don't always pawn off the female onto the male, onto the females, you hear? Because
Yes.
sometimes they need a man to be able to talk to at a level of respect and profession, who is professional, a person who is professional. Sometimes they need that. Because you can pawn them off to a female, and the female might have been a source of their issues.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
you are welcome. Okay, Ortavia, it's now minutes of 8. Where do we go from here? Do we continue, or is everybody tired? Everybody tired now? Or we can continue. What do you think, Ortavia?
I think everybody's very into it. You need to
You're the
continue.
boss. You're the boss. You tell me. All right then. Okay then. So we're going to look then at the adolescent brain development. And so for those of you who teach in the high school, me afraid of high school, you see, me telling you, I'm not telling you no lie, afraid of them so still, right? And I remember years ago when I was asked to teach the, you know, we used to teach at an all-age school, and then the principal sent me up to to big school, afraid, right? But with time, I came to love them so much. It was just absolutely amazing. And you know, I walked away and I said at the end of the year, but them are just big too, look there, you know, them not just as big as them one. So what happens then with the adolescent brain between the ages of 13 and 21? Usually they're supposed to be able to anticipate and consider the consequences of their behavior, right? Why? Brain growth spurt. You get the first 2 years, quick spurt, like all of the neurons kind of like clicking together. And then you hit the pubertal years. And again, there is another spurt in the growth development, right? But again, the weirdest thing that happened is emotional part outrun the logical part, totally. And it's only until them get to maybe about age, say, 15, 16, they move into what is called the formal operational thinking stage, where they can kind of like logically work through things. But at age 13, they are on their way to getting there. So they should, at this age, be able to anticipate and consider the consequences and therefore modify their behaviors to meet their goals. And they can now start looking at long-term goals. And here is the paradox. When emotions and logics come together for the teenager, emotion is going to take over. Always remember that, all right? So when they get confrontative and they get kind of like up in your face, always remember they're going to sit in that emotion, whether it is anger or whether it is apathy. They are going to sit in that emotion as opposed to being willing to logically work through the problems. So they should have a sense of time and sequence and all of that to be able to make judgments about what is dangerous and what is safe, and to think in abstract ways. Here is a funny thing though. This time when they should be able to judge the danger and be able to figure out things, safety, they experience two things in brain development. One of them we call the personal fable. And the personal fable in our field really is that, you know, the things that bad things only happen to other people. It can't happen to them. Who? Me can go up to the teacher and tell her what me think. And guess what? She can't do me nothing. Right? That's a fable. That's a personal fable. Anybody else can, but anybody else can, but you can't go to her, but never talk to her. Well, look at that, right? Then they also have another thing happening with them. It's called the imaginary audience. And they believe that the whole world revolves around them. They go back into an egocentric stage where they think that the world should do what they want to do. And sometimes we get into arguments with them or we get into fights with them, not realizing that this is a developmental process for them. And you sometimes say, but that don't make no sense, Dr. Bradford. If they're supposed to can think logically, you're supposed to can judge danger and think abstractly. Why is it that they are being inappropriate with their aggression towards me? Why are they underestimating the dangers? Why are they so reckless? Why are they planning? They're not planning as they ought to. Why is it a child gets to age 18 years old, gets to college and have no idea where they want to go? That don't make sense, Dr. Blackburn. Well, guess what? The brain is still developing. You see that 10% there? It is still developing. And that very often is the harder part for the child to develop. So you have this spurt around puberty, and then it goes into, you know, constant growth. But this is where you have children moving, like they switch moods. You can't tell where they're going to be at any given time, how they're going to respond to you. They love you 1 minute, they hate you the next. They want to work with you 1 minute, they don't want to work with you. And that is the paradox of the adolescent brain development that we kind of like have to fight with the repercussions for. Okay? Physical problems that come as a result of poor brain development involve things like, and we see this sometimes with girls, they might have problems with their coordination and their balance. They might have more medical problems. Girls, for the most part, and a lot of boys, we are finding, have a misperception of what they look like, their body image, sleep disturbance, eating disturbance, somatic problems, and they tend to be also accident prone. So these are some of the things that happen to them physically when the brain is not developing the way that it should develop, when their bodies are not developing as they should. At this time also, they may have, instead of being flexible in their thinking, they become a whole lot more rigid in their thinking. They might feel that they need to preserve themselves. The world is a really unfriendly place, and they need to preserve themselves. And they can't see all the different perspectives. What they see is their perspective. And I want you to understand that that is because of the egocentric stage that they go back to. And again, it's a developmental process. It's not what the child wants to do. The child doesn't want to be irritable and to not concentrate on the problems because their friends are there. The peers are sitting in the classroom, and when them don't and they can't answer the question that the teachers ask, they're going to be embarrassed. And because they think the whole world, the whole classroom focusing on them, they can either withdraw or they might become aggressive. Okay? And they might become very pessimistic, believing that they're not going to make anything out of themselves. Why should we even try? And so they lock themselves into that space. Okay? So we need to remember that that these things can happen. And guess what, everybody? I'm going to have to ask my daughter to turn off the oven because I can smell the potato baking downstairs. Give me 1 second, please. Just give me 1 second.
If you have any comments or questions, you can also type, or Dwayne and I will try our best to answer. We'll leave the rest for Doc when she comes back. But
Hi, I'm trying to bake a potato and I can stay up here and smell it. I'm sorry. I sit down and go, so I forget about the potato altogether because I don't all have the attention. All right, were there any questions? Were there any questions, Octavia?
no, none came up. I'd opened the floor, but I didn't see any.
Okay then. All right, so I think we can go on then. So how do they behave then? Here, they become violent. They might become reckless. And I'm sure that you all can start understanding this, right? The girl, you might find them regressing also in their behavior. So them start behaving like them younger, right? And a lot of times, even when people think that children are smoking or whatever, they don't realize the child is going back to the oral stage, right? Where the oral stage, where you get pleasure from the mouth, all right? Whatever goes into the mouth. And so they might go back even to that stage. They start behaving like children again. I don't know if you ever noticed girls in high school carrying teddy bears. Walking around with teddy bears or walking around with little toys. Or you see children with lollipop in their mouth, walking around, sucking the lollipop and stuff. They say, why are they doing that? Too big. Why do they suck lollipop? Right? They get pleasure from that. Right? Usually it's because something is going on with them. And human beings, for the most part, I want you to understand, we don't, for the most part, unless we're hedonistic in our overall being, we do not move towards pain. We tend to move towards pleasure and away from pain, all right? But when pain is there all the time, we have to figure out ways to deal with the pain. And so you might find children abandoning their peer groups for older friends. They might increase, they might decrease the amount of activities around others. They have problems dealing with the rules. So when the principal says it's devotion time or worship, what do they call it again in school again? In the morning time when we have worship or devotion, right? When the whole school gather for worship, and they decide that they're not going to do it, okay? When the teachers set the rules in the classroom, they have problems following the rules of the classroom. They may even get involved in self-destructive behaviors. And when we talk about self-destructive behaviors, we can look at things like they might start hurting themselves. Self-harm, you know. Sometimes when you see a child just picking and picking and picking away in the skin raw, you know, that's a self-harming behavior, right? You might see the child, the younger child might pull out the hair. That's a self-harming behavior. And that might indicate that something is going on with the child in terms of some sort of trauma. They become antisocial and also delinquent in their behaviors and become most likely sexually promiscuous. When you talk about sexuality, the minute the child hits 13 years old, the child becomes a sexual being again. Why is that so? Because, you know, when they're little bit and they're touching themselves and doing all that kind of stuff, please, I'm not trying to be obnoxious or anything. I'm just saying it just as it is, right? As children go through the different stages. When they hit puberty onward, their reproductive system has kicked in. And they might not know what is going on. All kind of hormone flowing through their body. They don't know what is going on. They just know that they feel this minute and that next minute and whatever. And so as they start learning, whether the right way or the wrong way. And if they were sexually traumatized before, that means they might have learned it the wrong way, and now they have to process it within their developmental stage. Anything can happen. They can become sexually promiscuous, and you hear about those children who are just all over the place, or they can decide that they are just not going to have anything to do with sex at all, right? And so that might be an indicator of trauma as well, right? So the dating and the wanting to go out and all of that, that's normal, right? But when they get out of hand, then one way or the other, you want to pay attention and wonder what that is. Also, they can't control themselves, all right? So this is my last question that I want to ask. Do you believe, and I would love for you to type your answers up so Dwayne or Octavia could see it. Can teachers and administrators traumatize their students? And in what ways can we traumatize our students?
That's a good one.
So I want you to tell me now. I am going to be quiet just for a minute and let you tell me how we can traumatize our children.
No, hurry up and type. We're waiting.
They're waiting. We're going to do the silent thing. So please feel free and type for me, okay?
I see if we constantly shout or threaten them.
Yes, if we constantly shout at them and threaten them. All right, boy, you better go sit
Tell
up.
them dance.
Huh?
Somebody right, tell them dance. That's true.
Oh, that's emotional trauma. That's verbal abuse, right? So let's put the names on it. When we start labeling them and labeling them in negative ways, that can be a source of trauma. And I want to say, one of the things that some of us do that we must be very careful of, we label the behavior and never the child.
Yes.
Okay? So you don't say you're a bad boy, or you're just this or your dad. What kind of wicked boy you be? What kind of whatever it is. It's the behavior that you pull out, and you put the adjective to the behavior, and then you explain to them why the behavior is not acceptable.
Adrian has his hand raised. I'm gonna unmute him so he can speak.
Okay, who is that? Okay.
Adrian.
All right. One of my things traumatize the child is that you can just imagine a child coming from home and the child was not put together.
Yes.
Because I've known this boy where his top button is always missing. So I said, imagine that child coming from home where the parents tell the child the whole morning, you're careless, you're worthless, you are cross, you're untidy. And the child left the yard with that. And as the child come before you, the teacher, you don't see the child. You see you see the untidiness of the child. I say, why? Call them in class, mama, fix up yourself before you come back in here. That's a double dose.
Double dose. That's double dose. That's called re-traumatizing the child, right? What if we were to say, come here, my darling. You can't do it because you're a man, right? So,
yeah.
Hey, you look good when your shirt button up still, you know. What you say? And you button it up for him. Look at you, you look good, you look good.
Yeah, you have to find ways.
You know?
Because
yeah, look at you. You look as smart as can be, right? Something like that. Go ahead.
Because I have a student who, I remember the group I had previous, the 018, 019 school year, and the day before their graduation, I almost shed tears to where I got them and to where they were. There was one boy, he was reading at like the grade 1 level. or below at grade 6. And he had this level of anger that is just, all my years of teaching, I've not seen it. And I work with him, I talk with him, I encourage him, I motivate him. And I remember when I gave out the badges for the monthly tests, he turned to his class and said, nobody will ever take these badges from me.
Wow.
And for the rest of the school year, nobody could beat him. His friend, at the end of the year, his best friend beat him by 1 mark in one of the subjects. And because I know they may not get prize of the prize given, I took them outside. And I had the head boy with me. So I gave them their ribbons, their buttons, their certificate, and I had the head boy handing it out to them. That boy left my class with an average. Remember I said he couldn't read and he was packed with anger. He left my class with an average of almost 80%.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Well, I mean, for the first
As it
3,
is
4, for the first 4 months, I had to restrain myself because he did everything in his power to display that anger, to get mad no matter what. When he left my class, he was already mean that he's one of the best behaving child. And there are some others who were with him who I had to motivate them. I remember this one, I had to take him outside because, trust me, I think he was the most challenging one. And I said to him, what do you want to be? He said to me, sir, I want to own my own juice factory. He said, no worry ahead, because he couldn't read. And I said to him, no worry, I'm going to work with you. And trust me, you are going to own your own juice factory. They graduated last year, July. And almost every day, most of them would come and look for me. And they are in their 2nd term of high school, first form, and they still come and look for me.
I think one is you have affirmed them. One, you model for them, you model what is acceptable behavior
Yes.
by keeping calm, right?
Yeah.
In all of the pushback, you kept calm. Also, you affirm them. Children need affirmation. They need to know that they can do it. They might not become the doctor, but they can become the owner of the juice company.
Dr. Bradford, but what I find amazing, I remember the day of the banquet, the graduation banquet. I was at the door because I was preparing to go out because I had somewhere to go. And for the whole banquet, that same boy sit down for the whole time. Look, every time I turn around, his eyes are on me. So I realized I made a huge impact. And then there was this girl, it's like, I just said, oh, that, she tear her to pieces. She stood with her legs open. She fight her uniform untied. And I remember one teacher said to me, what did you do to that girl? I said, what? You don't even know she's at school. She sits with her leg closed. If you try to pick a war with her, she ignore you. It reached to the point where they even carry, as females, I saw a male do it, but when I saw the female, I was like, whoa, they even took their own polish and brush, the female, to clean their shoes. They buy their own broom. It's like, from where they were, that level of trauma that they have been through, and for you, the teacher, to look beyond that and see the child and not the trauma. Yeah. And sometimes as teachers, we re-traumatize the children over and over because we are looking at the problem the child is giving and not looking at the child in or herself.
You know, as you said, I think that there's something I really want to say. As teachers who have had successful strategies, this is where the professional development workshops are so key, because now you can share your experiences with each other. You might say, oh, that not gonna work or whatever, but you might be able to say, so this is how it worked for me. And so when people can see that it can work, because the reality, you know, is that on a day-to-day basis, when a teacher have 24, 30, 40 kids, they're expected to manage the class, deliver the material and everything.
But
When
that
you
class,
have a number,
hold on, but that class was a challenge for me because that class was 20, it was, tell her, it was 17 boys and only 8 girls. So you know what, but for me to get to that stage, I had to be consistent.
yes, consistent, and affirmative. I love that. I love that.
Consistency. And
Yes.
I get them to where you mean that when they're finished, I remember one, he had a behavioral issue also. He couldn't read. He was like, I think it was what called non-starter. And before the year end, that boy was reading devotion, the Bible devotion. And that teachers were like, what? Teachers literally opened their eyes as they could not believe that he could read. Sometimes we just need to, we know they're going through a problem, just look beyond the problem, teach the child, and try to get the child need a comfortable environment, an environment where they feel safe. Provide that environment, and you will get anything out of a child.
And so,
Thank you.
you are welcome. Thank you, Adrian, for that. Thank you so much. Right. So these are the ways that we re-traumatize our children. Please just be aware of them. Right now, many of our children are living in areas where there's a lot of war, ongoing wars. You know, this faction against that faction, and they have to deal with it. They get it in the home, you know, they see things being destroyed. All of this, they go to school, and especially teenagers, they get victimized by their own peers and everything, and they have to deal with it. So my final word to you is that understand, please, that trauma is going to manifest itself in different ways. A lot of times it's because of biological factors, social factors, you know, just, you know, all these different areas, emotional states and all of that. So if we as teachers can just be there for them and ensure that we don't re-traumatize them. And I remember a few weeks ago, I said, if we as teachers experience trauma in our lives, then we have to deal with the traumas ourselves. We have to figure out ways to get help for the trauma so that we don't re-traumatize or
Dr. Bradford,
or not be there for the children.
can I say something?
Yes.
Maybe I know how to deal with the situation because, in all honesty, I have opened up before. Myself, I was not able to read properly until I was about grade 8 or 9. At grade 2, 3, 4, 5, I couldn't read. Social abuse, me get that. Physical abuse, my aunt used to beat me every Sunday morning. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse. The only abuse I have never faced, and I thank God, was sexual abuse. Every one of them. What kept me going was actually my teachers. Even when I could not read, they said, you are going to common entrance class. You and I know that, don't even go to the class if you can't read.
Right, right.
So my teachers are the persons who literally look beyond what I face. Because me and my aunt, at one point, I said to my uncle, I said to my aunt, if you beat me this morning, and I said to my uncle, I said to my grandmother, tell him if he beat me again, I'm going to lock him up. That's how bad. Sleeping on the floor, not eating for 3 days. Look at me now.
Look at you now, indeed. And so I want to say that just like you said, there's empathy. You have walked in their shoes, right? Yeah. You have walked in their shoes. You know that the brain is impacted. You know that learning did not occur when it should have, along the course of time that it should have. because of the abuse that you might have experienced. And like you said, look at you now. And I'm sure that, you know, all of us as teachers, we
But
love when
I
we
know, but as
graduate.
something as simple as not having any lunch, that can traumatize a child.
Yeah. Yes.
It
Yeah.
throw the child way off. And many because I know what it's like. And I said to my friends, I said, a child can have a hungry belly. I buy lunch for them. I will give them the lunch I eat because I know what I went through with that. And I have seen vast improvement even now with children. Oh, I deal with them. Again, as I said, stop looking at the child is going through, look at the child, him or herself, and see how you can best able to help that child. And I remember the course, I think it was you I did the course with, adverse childhood experience.
Yeah.
And I remember that course. Look at the child, whatever they're facing, help the child to look beyond that. So when they grow bigger, they can able to go past what they've been through and be successful in life.
Thank you, Adrian. I don't think I could have closed it out better, Ortavia. I think thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If there are any other questions or whatever, if there are topics in terms of this that you want us to sort of further develop for you, then please let us know. And I'm sure that Ortavia is going to get on me to get it done, right, Ortavia?
One thing, Fogo, I think Artavia is supposed to, she's hearing me, right?
Yes, I am.
I wonder if we could do one of the session on educational psychology, because I think that is well needed in the Jamaican. Looking at the various theory of child development, the Erickson and the Maslow,
Yeah.
Maslow, Bandura,
to
all of
see how best we can actually help us and refresh our memory in helping the children of this country. And again, I must say thanks to the diaspora for these workshops. And I have printed all my certificates so far and them into the office to go on my file to show them that the diaspora is actually helping the teachers in this country to be able to better develop themselves professionally. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Adrian, for
Thank
that.
you.
And we're
Thank
going
you,
to
Adrian.
definitely create a class of such for you guys. We'll talk about it and see how best we can come up with something. Okay. Oh, here you are. Okay.
No problem.
So we're gonna shut it down, right?
Yes, please.
Closing out right now. Okay.
Everybody's okay. No questions done, right?
Yes. Yes.
No person was. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. See you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good evening.
Bye, everybody. Enjoy
Bye.
your week,
Bye.
your quarantine week.
It's actually 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right.
All right. Blessings.
All right. Blessings to you too. Thank you.